Hey everyone. Well, there's always that particular book that got you hooked onto reading. For many people, it was the Harry Potter books. For some, it was the Chronicles of Narnia, or even going back into Tolkien's work for Lord of the Rings or The Hobbit. Even though The Hobbit is still my favorite book of all time, even still. But I'm going to talk about real quick the Mouse and the Motorcycle series. Yeah. I first saw these specials on Saturday mornings as a kid, so I not immediately, but I checked out the books at my local library and loved them and was just hooked on reading from that point on. And this was actually a surprise find that I found this past week on Amazon, and I am impressed, really, that this got all the way to DVD. I know there were some VHS copies out in stores. I remember seeing one at the local store in the local library. But yeah, it all began with The Mouse and the Motorcycle. The great story about a little mouse called Ralph who befriends a boy who allows him to ride his toy motorcycle, which can only run if he makes a sound. I love the idea of that, and I love the original short that was always on Saturday mornings. Directed actually by the guy who went on to direct Tremors, which is a great movie in itself, and of course is probably most infamous as the director of the Eddie Murphy flop, The Adventures of Pluto Nash. So wonderful animation, stop motion. It's a great little short, and I've actually spent the last 4 or 5 years trying to write a film adaptation, because even though the short is perfect in itself, there is actually a lot more in the book that I think could be made into a great movie. The second is Runaway Warehouse, and it's a lot more action-packed. I think the book itself is a little more sluggish, but it had a lot of good intent. I think the villain is better. Katso, weird name, but a very good villain. And the animation is, again, spectacularly done. And all of this animation was done by one guy, John Clark Matthews, who you can find his YouTube channel online. So so much great stop motion over the years. The third one is a weird one because it's kind of a step down, both the book and the special. The animation in this one is a little too cheesy, Looney Tune-esque, that I think didn't work for these particular specials. But if you can find these on Amazon, definitely get them. I would love to find out what kids today think of this special, because this hooked me into reading as a kid, just the specials alone. And the books themselves are great, from the legendary author Beverly Cleary. And these are also strange enough as it is, because she was not a fantasy writer. She was known for the kid books of kids in the average neighborhoods, coming up with goofy ideas and all that. She didn't really do any fantasy stuff like witches or anything like that. This is all she did in that vein, and I think it's still some of the best that's ever been done for children's literature. So definitely check these out if you haven't found them, and enjoy.